global dimming just means that the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth is beginning to be reduced by cloud cover, by haze, by pollutants. So the studies have been going on for quite some time now, showing that the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth is being reduced. Now, the catch-22 here is, if we're already reducing the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth, then when the geoengineering community says we need to put particulates up and we need to put other things in the atmosphere to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth, we are already subjecting ourselves to global dimming from some of our activities and the jets. So wouldn't this cause a worse problem, because we're not cooling down, technically, because we're in a global dimming cycle, which is getting, the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth is getting less and less. So I have some questions about global dimming, and also about scientists putting more things in the air to stop sunlight reaching the Earth, because if you don't have the sunlight, then you don't have crop production as well. So human health decline, mentally, depression, all kinds of things can happen because we obscure the sunlight from reaching the Earth. Weather modification means that someone puts a chemical or particulate, something into the air to seed clouds to get them to rain out or to snow in areas where they may not rain out or snow if left on the normal weather cycles. So weather modification is done throughout the United States. Anyone can modify the weather at any time without any congressional oversight, no state oversight, for the most part, except for Texas has an advisory body. But people can go and modify the weather. They may or may not have to report to the federal government, NOAA, and if they have to report to NOAA, NOAA can probably waive any requirements for reporting, and that's why we think that we don't see a lot of ongoing weather modification reported in the eastern part of the United States, is because they may be waiving the requirement. We're not sure about this, but that's another level of investigation. However, documents that I obtained from NOAA, that all public record, anyone can obtain them, show that there's over 60 ongoing weather modification programs in the states that are marked in yellow. Now, I designed this because of NOAA documents, and documents from Canada and documents from weather modification companies who were openly talking about doing weather modifications in other countries. So the yellow part of this section is all ongoing weather modification programs. They can use rockets, small planes, large planes. They can use any method to ground-based applications, shooting things into the air. All these can be used in weather modification by companies or states or cities, private companies, private individuals. Anyone can modify your weather. Now, they don't need public consent, public permission. They can use any chemical that they choose, experimental or silver iodide, which has been around for a long time. And so all of these programs are ongoing. One weather modification can modify 184,000 square miles at one time, and that's bigger than the square miles of the state of California here. California is only 164,000 square miles, and yet one state is modifying 184,000 square miles. That's bigger than Idaho is modifying, only has 63,000 square miles, but they can modify 184,000 square miles. So the range that they're modifying is into other states over other areas. Now, you can have rain enhancement, snow enhancement, you can have hail suppression, they can dissipate fog, all kinds of programs are going on. But most of it is involved in putting rainfall or snow, more of it, or into areas where it doesn't usually get very much. So you can, the major impacts are agriculture, watersheds, tree areas that might be subjected to not getting as much rainfall, and once these programs are implemented, they can't control the end result. So you could get flooding, too much rain, not enough rain. Now, Wyoming, for example, here, decided in 2006 to put more snow into the Wyoming mountains than ever in recorded history. And what they intended to do with that extra is to run it all into Southern California to feed Southern California's thirst here. So they implemented the program and they were extremely successful. Never had Wyoming had so much snow in its mountains. However, since that time, Colorado and surrounding counties in Wyoming have on and off suffered drought, extreme drought, and they have less water coming down the Colorado River. There's less in the watershed. So you're having a problem that when you modify in one area, you're going to subtract or have a negative effect on another area. Siskiyou County up here in the central part of the state, up north of us and east, fought PG&E and solved the problem of the weather modification that was going to be implemented there, because they said, we don't want you to modify our weather to put our snow and our water somewhere else. So they put a stop to PG&E modifying the weather. However, the city of Los Angeles is now got a weather modification in the San Gabriel Mountains. And this weather modification is new, starting in 2008. And now we're having complaints from agriculture producers in this area that they're in drought and not getting enough rainfall. The Panhandle, Texas ranchers are complaining bitterly that weather and their snow and rainfall is being redirected into other areas by weather modification programs, and that the grass isn't growing, so that they either have to feed their cattle or go out of business. And there's an online discussion of that on March 6, 2008 that you can download from the Texas regulatory body here to listen to their complaints. And they even feel that some of the weather modification programs have triggered tornadoes and unusual weather events in their areas. So this is what it looks like here. Canada modifies the weather here. You're having some experiments in Florida, and you're having some experiments in Alaska, and Mexico is modifying the weather. So as the jet stream moves from west to east, California and PG&E says, well, if we need extra water, we can take an extra 10% of the water from one of our programs and keep the water from traveling into Nevada. We will have it rain out or and put it in snow, and we will have that do that so that Nevada could get less water. So as the jet stream moves this way and people are putting in more and more weather modification programs, it's going to affect agriculture, watersheds, water supplies as it goes this way, because you're going to be putting it in places that don't need it for private gain, commercial gain. Ski resort could have a weather modification over their ski resort, which might take water from somewhere else or snow from some other location. So we need to get Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison's bill, number 601, defeated this year, because it allows anyone to mitigate or modify the weather with very little definition of mitigation in order to do what? So, but all these government agencies would be allowed without congressional oversight or public consent to modify the weather. So what happens to crop production? What happens to normal climates? We can disrupt the microclimates. And we add to this the jets and NASA studies and IPC studies, lots of things, university studies showing that the jets are changing the climate. So now we're modifying the weather and the jets are changing the climate. No wonder people here are having, all across the United States, are having weird weather events or lightning events, or because there's lots of experiments. We have lightning experiments as well going on. So there's lots of things going on which impact all of us, but it's our food supply and our water supply that is going to be impacted the most from all of this. I'm not sure to what extent, but we're becoming more and more sophisticated in being able to possibly manipulate the jet stream. We're being more sophisticated in what MIT Professor Emanuel said in a television program that I saw on the Discovery Channel that was talking about this issue. He was saying that what we can do is we can take carbon black, okay, and we can take jets and we can release carbon black on the West Coast, And as it heats up going across the United States, it creates these weather fronts that grow in intensity. And what it can do is these weather fronts grow in intensity so that when there's a hurricane coming in over here, the jet stream and these fronts are moving this way, and it would push the hurricanes off the coast. Now, he talked about a fleet of jet airplanes releasing carbon black that would create these disturbances or perturbances, as he calls them, or fronts. My question is, what happens to the weather as this carbon black, which is soot, which is a pollutant that we don't like in our cars and automobiles and jets, starts being released by a series of jets, and what happens to the weather? What happens to the air quality as this is happening? What happens to agriculture as you change the fronts and the weather that's going on across the United States just to redirect a hurricane off, in other words, from Florida or some area on the East Coast? So these are being proposed, these geoengineering projects are being proposed. We kind of feel that since we're seeing black contrails here every so often, that they may be starting to practice with this so that they could determine and see if this particular project would work. There's a treaty against manipulating the weather for warfare. There's also a treaty against having weather modification programs that last more than so many days, etc. But everyone is engaged here, as you can see from this map, in modifying the weather. There's something going on all over. The programs can last as long as they want. All this is going on, and as we perfect this and do studies and research and they perfect, more and more they will be able to control the weather, change what's happening, and when they do that, they disrupt your watershed, the water supplies to your watersheds, and they disrupt agriculture and the microclimates needed to produce crops. And so the detrimental effect is on all of us. And I think that they're, at some point with these weather modification programs, experimenting on us. In other words, we're the guinea pigs to see that if we do this, then we may have this effect. And we could be used to perfect it. And since there's no oversight, no rules, any chemicals can be used, any experiment with regard to the atmosphere, and that the public has no say, then this is a dangerous thing that we're experimenting with because we could be destroying our own food supplies.